This is going to be a short demo video showcasing some of the new features in Edge Manager version 3. I have an existing system deployed that includes 5 different nodes as well as a selection of applications. The first new feature I'd like to demonstrate is the ability to upgrade containerized applications. We can see here that Web Server Node 1 is an application deployed on Node 1 with the template Web Server version 1. It deploys a single container with the Nginx image. If I select this template, we can see its information, but we can also use this drop-down to select a new version. Version 2 has changed the ports used as well as the tag used for our Nginx image. Application template upgrades are designed for small changes like this. Any larger changes should be done with a brand new application template. If I head back to my application, Web Server Node 1, I can use the Actions menu to choose to upgrade this application to version 2. The same process can be used to go back from version 2 to version 1. Now we can see that our Nginx image has been updated to the new Alpine Slim version from version 2. The next feature I'd like to demonstrate is some deeper integration with Edge Central. I have an Edge Central application deployed here on Node 5. It is the chemical tank demo, and we can see that it's an Edge Central application by the logo on the right-hand side of the table. If I select this application, we can see some of the usual information, but now we're provided with an Edge Central label underneath our list of containers, as well as the version that's running and a button that takes us straight to the UI for this particular deployment. By selecting this button, we're sent to the login page for the UI, and by logging in, we can see information about Edge Central. We note that we're accessing this via the Edge Manager server on port 50,000. This is one of the new features of Edge Manager version 3, port forwarding. If we navigate to the port forwarding menu, we can see the port forward that was created automatically when we pressed the View GUI button. This forwards port 9090 on the node to 50,000 on the server. We can create new port forwards as well to access various different ports on the nodes. For example, on Node 1, we have our web server. We know this web server is running application template web server v2, which is exposing port 8888 for where our web server should be hosted. If I head to port forwarding, create a new port forward, I'm going to call it web server node 1, select node 1 from the list, and forward port 8888 to 50,001, I should now be able to go to that address. I'll change this port to 50,001, and we can see the default splash page for Nginx. The next feature I'd like to talk about is automations. Automations can be used to automate the execution or deployment of scripts or applications. In this case, I have a number of scripts already defined for the system. One of them is a Python script, and there are 2 shell scripts. I'm going to create some automations that allow me to deploy these or run these at a particular frequency on our nodes. If I head to automations, automations allows me to create rules and actions. First, we create actions. An action is something that an automation triggers, that a rule triggers to execute. I'm going to create a script action, and this script action is going to execute the netinfo script. We're going to call this netinfo action, and you can give it a custom timeout if you like. I'll create another action for scripts, and this time it's to install the stress application, and we'll call this install stress action. And finally, one more to run stress. We'll call this run stress action. We can also create actions for applications. There are a number of types: create, start, deploy, stop. If we choose create, we can then select a application template that we want to create. Let's imagine that we're going to deploy the demo somewhere else and we want to deploy the simulators that it requires. I can select the simulators, I could provide configuration, and I can give this a name. I'll call it deploy sims action. So here we've created 4 actions: one to deploy our demo simulators, and 3 different scripts: one to gather network information, and one to install, and then one to stress, and then one to run stress. If I go back to automations, I can create a rule, and we have 2 types of rules. One is time-based. Let's imagine that we have our net info action. By clicking on it on the right hand side, it adds it to one of the many possible selected actions. This box here indicates whether it runs more than once. And now I can give it a name. So I'm going to call this rule net info rule. We could give it a description, and we can give it a schedule. You can either do this as a cron expression, or you can edit these drop downs to build it more dynamically. I'm going to say that every minute, for every hour, for every day, I'd like you to run this net info script, and I'm going to select all my nodes. You can use the standard filtering capabilities here to select a suitable set of nodes. I press create. This is going to trigger, and some scripts are going to execute. We'll come back to those in a minute after we've explored the label-based actions to see some of these executed. If I create a new rule, this time I select labels. Here I can choose one or more labels that will trigger these actions to run. So let's say I want an action that will install stress. I'm going to make this label install, create a brand new label, and the rule is going to be called install stress. And I'll press create. If I now head to my nodes, select one of them, and choose to edit the labels, I can now choose my install label. When I select this, it will trigger a script to execute, and that script was install stress. Stress is now installed. I can also do that across all the nodes by selecting them and choosing to edit, either add or remove the labels that it will have. So here I'll add install to all of these nodes, which will have caused a number of install stress scripts to execute. We also can see some netinfo scripts now. If we head back to our automations and look at our netinfo rule, it will show in the action log section some of the scripts that have run. I'd now like to demonstrate briefly the ability to import and export definitions and templates. In our scripts, we have script definitions. You can select one or more of these and use the Actions menu to export them. This manifest can then be imported via the button in the top right. The same can be said for application templates, as well as alert definitions. The final new feature for Edge Manager version 3 is multi-tenancy. You'll note so far in the demo that this has all been one tenant. If I log out of this system, press back from my company login page, I'm asked to provide an organisation name. Organisations are terminology for tenants. Here I'm going to log into the default organisation, and I'm going to use this to access the organisations panel. Here we can see my demo organisation that I was logged into earlier. I could then create a brand new organisation where I can give it a name, a password, and a description, as well as a logo. Organisations are entirely separate from one another. Thank you. This has been a very brief overview of the new features for Edge Manager version 3.